Most days. But welcome back. Family, we miss you. It's season 3. We started from the bottom, now we here. Who would have thought we'd make it? But guess what? I got some guests. I got a great topic. We got just awesome people of God. And the topic for today's show is simply forgiveness. How do we forgive as Christians? How do we forgive as Christ-like people of Christ? And as we grow in our faith, how do we take the word of forgiveness? How do we forgive ourselves? Right? So those are some of the things we'll talk about. We'll discuss. We are live.
Yes, of course.
So I'm just going to introduce everybody. Y'all know him. He's ignorant. AB.
Yeah.
Aaron Bruce.
The most time co-host, always with the quotes and also the comments. So.
What he said. We got lay servant, first lady, not my first lady. Love you, babes. Kim Carr, holding it down for the females. We got pastor, brother in Christ, church planter, entrepreneur, handyman,
amen.
New husband,
To God be the glory.
father,
Right.
Yes.
Eric Mitchell, pastor, forgive me, Pastor Eric Mitchell. We got Tiresias, history and social work, man of God, mentor, father, also a husband, great testimony, just an awesome man of God. So we are here just to talk about forgiveness, how it impacts us in our life, and how it should impact you in your life. Short disclaimer, none of us truly have the answer. Our word isn't gospel. We come together in holy communion where we can just come to a place of enlightenment, and no one's right, no one's wrong. Our view might not be your view might not be our view, and this is our interactive experience. If you like what you're hearing, you have a question, you have a comment, you have a concern, all you have to do is jot it down in the comment. Be sure to like and share. We see everything. We love to have the feedback, and we will answer and respond to everything we get. Cool?
Yeah.
Cool. So, whew. So we're going to start off with forgiveness. We're just going to go around, and when you hear the word, just say what does forgiveness mean to you, and we'll start with the lady.
I'd say forgiveness means to me is freeing of the heart, freeing of the heart, freeing of your heart and soul. Without practicing forgiveness, sometimes we need to practice that on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis. Depends on the situation.
Yes.
But without forgiveness, other things fill the heart. So if we don't forgive, resentment can fill the heart, anger can fill the heart, hatred fills the heart, and then how much room is left for love.
Wow.
So we need to free ourselves, and I think it's the greatest act, one of the greatest acts we can do as Christians, that we are called to do, is to forgive.
Awesome.
Amen. For me, forgiveness is simply freeing oneself. I have to piggyback off of Sister Carr. It is the freeing of oneself. Being allowed to forgive someone is one of the greatest gifts that God has given us. One of the hardest things in the flesh to accomplish, but it's true freedom to me.
To me, forgiveness is a two-way monster. What I mean by that is, if I forgive you, expecting that you forgive me, it opens up other worlds that we ignore, but often slap us in the face. If I forgive you because you truly hurt me, and I truly forgive you, I'm able to free myself.
Wow.
I feel that most people forgive with the hope or the act or expectations of being forgiven as well. And when they don't receive that forgiveness, it carries on to other demons, other things that open up wars or battles. So that's why I feel it's a two-way monster. If I forgive, as my sister and my brother says, I can truly free my spirit. But if I forgive and am not forgiven, it creates other things that carry on small things and make it become mountains.
Wow.
It's hard. Always hard to follow up when we have such excellent guests. Always. If I was to make my best definition of forgiveness. It's the unburdening of one's soul. You know, to let loose the chains, not physically, but just truly to let yourself be unburdened by the weight of whatever emotion, as he said, you know, as anger or guilt or sadness, but to unburden yourself. And I feel like by the action of unburdening, we allow ourselves to commune more with God, to interact, to be at peace with ourselves, so that we can also commune with God.
Amen. Amen.
Somebody took philosophy.
I did actually. How'd you know? How'd you know?
A ring of the soul. When I think of forgiveness, short and simple, I would say it's a characteristic of God. You know, when I think of that, you know, we serve a just God, we serve a loving God, we serve a forgiving God.
Yes.
And what I mean by that, like, for me to say I'm a Christian, or for me to try to live to be the best Christian I can be, I have to learn how to forgive in some form or some fashion. Now, we all fall short. You know what I mean? In some areas, it's harder to forgive. In some ways, we forgive more for something more than the other thing. But at the end of the day, it is a characteristic of God. So if I am to try to live a godly life, I gotta forgive, and I have to work on my forgiveness. As hard as that is, if I had to think about it just off my head, that's probably one of the hardest things for a Christian to do is forgive.
Yes.
You know, right? Like, it's
Absolutely.
easy to say I love you, but how do I love you when you do something unlovable?
Right.
You know, and that's forgiveness, and that's a hard thing. A lot of times when we talk about love, we're talking about forgiveness. When we're talking about grace, we're talking about forgiveness. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I mean, we all know the adage, forgive and forget. Where do we stand on that as far as how do we forgive somebody, but yet still go back, and should we go back to that person? So I'll give you an example. If someone hurts you, or you're hurt by a situation, do we go back to that situation saying that we forgive for the pain that it caused? You know what I mean? I think a lot of times people have a misconception that if I forgive, I have to forget, you know what I mean, and let go. And I get that to a certain extent, but at some point, where do we remember, you know what I mean? So, like, if you stab me in my back, I can forgive you for stabbing me in my back, but, like, I might not kick it with you anymore. You know, I don't want to get stabbed again.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I guess that's where I'm at. Like, where does forgiveness starts, and like, what are the levels of forgiveness in which we should use as far as when we live our Christian life?
Well, I think, and those are excellent points. I think where we have a misconception is that it's forgive and forget.
Mm-hmm.
It's forgiving is a process,
Mm-hmm.
and so when we forgive, we're not necessarily forgetting. We are working through the process of forgiving. So a good example is if you're in a relationship and something happens, more than likely it might be the woman who brings it up again and again and again, right? Calm down. So I own it. We own it. It's part of the trap. But anyways, but if something is brought up again and again, and just like you said about if we're forgiving little or forgiving a lot, that means we haven't forgiven enough. That means so it goes back to when I said sometimes we have to keep forgiving. So when an issue comes back up in our minds and our hearts and our souls, we have to keep forgiving because we haven't come to the completion of forgiveness. So, and I've had various levels through my life, some pretty severe, to some very minors, where I had to finally come to a revelation that I was the one keeping this unhealthy relationship in my mind. I wasn't forgiving. And it had to come to a point not only forgiving the person, the act, but also forgiving myself for continuing to carry the burden of it. And to free and saying it's okay to forgive. Forgiving doesn't mean to say it's okay for what happened. Forgiving means that you are going through the process and you're going through the healing of what happened. And from that, then you can go on and free your soul. You can act and go on as God has taught us to go forth. And because I tell people, sometimes if you're in the middle of forgiveness, and let's say you did something to me, and I forgive you, but if I'm, like we said before, if I'm expecting you to accept that, you may never accept that, so then where does that put me? And now it is my issue, so I need to solve that issue. And I solve it through prayer, I solve it through forgiving myself and forgiving the situation. Because I may or may not have that, the conclusion from you.
Yeah.
Because you may not get it, or you may die, or you may just never be in that same place that I am.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of people get stuck, because now they're expecting it back, and I want you to receive my forgiveness, but it may never happen, and then what are you going to do?
So,
It's my turn. No, I'm just
so for me, forgiveness is a level of maturity. First things first, it's like repentance, okay? When we ask God, when we go to God in repentance, he tells us to turn away and never go back to it. So that cliche of forgive and forget is hard for me, because if I forgive you, then I must forget what you did to me. Because if I don't forget what you did to me, I'll never forgive you. Same thing you're saying. I will hold on to it, and all I'll be saying to you is I forgive you. But yet and still, if you do something again, I'll bring that back up. So did I ever forgive you for that, what you did 5 years ago? Not if I'm bringing it up 5 years later. I've never forgiven you. So let me finish. So in Colossians, I had to write this down while I was at work. Colossians 3:13 say, bearing with one another through it all, no matter what you've done, right? And if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, also must we forgive. So when God forgave us for any sins that we committed, he wiped the slate clean. He never brings it back up again. So how do we say we forgive, but we don't forget?
Okay. So to what you're saying, I got you. When the Israelites kept disobeying God, he just forgot? Or did he send them to Babylon?
No, he forgave them.
But they kept disobeying.
And eventually they got better with maturity.
But they had to go to Babylon.
They had to go through what they had to go through to get to where they had to get to.
So
Same
did God?
thing with us.
So God forgot? Because if I'm saying, if from that standpoint, if I just keep forgetting, if I say I forgive you, I forgot, it never happened. I open up the doors for you to do it again.
No.
I'm coming from, I can forgive you. We can move past it, but I can't forget about the situation. Now, if I bring that back up and put it in your face, I never forgave you from the jump.
That's what I just said.
No, you're saying forget it as, I don't believe it. I don't think, for me, it's not to forget it like it never happened. You remember it, but yeah, you have to remember it, I feel like. So like, I'll give an example. If I know someone steals from me, I can forgive you for doing that. I'm not leaving you in a room by yourself anymore, but I can forgive you for the action. I can't forget about it, that it never happened.
But let me ask you this. Is that your spiritual side or your fleshly side?
Yes.
Which one?
Yes.
I don't think we can take that stance.
Wow.
Is that your
That's
fleshly side or your spiritual side? Because
that can be my spiritual side. God gave me discernment.
Because God has given you forgiveness, and he never brings it up again, no matter what you've done.
So
if we're Christ-like, shouldn't we
Do the
respond the same way?
But God also gives us discernment to not getting if
Discernment to see
that
something.
I don't have to have you in that room or by yourself.
So let me
Okay.
jump in. That's why I mentioned it was a two-headed monster earlier. We use God in our personal intertwinably, and it's, if I do something and offend God, we ask God for forgiveness, and in our mind it's done with, it's over with. You know what? I punched him in his face. I was wrong. God forgive me, sir, forgive me. My God forgives me, but there's a consequence to what I did.
Of course.
The consequence of what I did is I offended another man. Now, it's still, whether I'm stealing from you, whether I'm going to take it still again, whether I'm going to punch you again, now we got to work together. Now we're in this space again, and you never know what I'm going to do. So you can forgive me for that action, but you're always aware.
Yeah.
What I don't realize and what I fight with when we holler this thing called Christianity, we sin all the time. We holler at God, God, I'm sorry, I ain't going to do it no more.
Yeah.
It's over with. But when another individual offends us, we holler at them for 6 months, 6 years,
Right.
60 days, you know. So it becomes that two-headed monster, as I stated. If I forgive in the spirit of Christ, you know what, sir, you offended me, I apologize. I'm going to keep on moving. Not many of us was taught like that. We was taught to, okay, you forgive, don't forget, though. I'm looking over my shoulder.
Right.
So long as I'm remembering and not forgetting, you use the quote, like, did they make it to the promised land? It was a consequence. You know, no matter what we do in life, there's going to be a consequence.
Right.
I may tell you that I forgive you, but as soon as I tell everybody else around you, they got a grudge against you. It's always a two-headed monster. So no matter how many times I forgive you or say I forgive you, if I tell my brother and I tell my sister, next time, me and you cool.
Right.
But next time you see them, I'm like, you know, I wish you
Yeah,
would do that to me. I wish you would steal me. So the forgiveness, even though I said I forgave you,
Right.
I opened up many other canals for other people to pour their hatred into your soul. So even though I don't deal with it no more,
Right.
I'll move along. So that's why I told you the two-headed monster. What we give is not what we expect. We expect forgiveness. Hey, God, I'm sorry. Get rid of it. But when somebody else, another human offends us, now it's like, nah, you got to work for my forgiveness. Now you got to show me. You got to take me to dinner. You got to pay a bill. Or you got to call me. You got to text me. You know, it goes back to, she says, as the woman, they may continue to, like, I've been married 14 years. December. About 2 years ago, me and my wife started dating in '99. We had a little whatever. So I'm like, yo, I'm trying to move on. What's going on? This is 2016. My wife went back to '99, 2001, 2002, and started beating me with some pains that I had forgot about.
Yeah.
Some things I didn't even know I had done. So imagine what we could have done in those 14 years that we could never move along because she was still angry at some stuff that I
Exactly.
did back then.
Exactly.
That I apologize for.
Right.
When I tell you I'm sorry, I'm moving on. But to her, she got we talking about 14, not 14 days, not 14 hours, not 14 months,
14.
14 years. She started mentioning some things I had forgot about. After I said I'm sorry, I was done with it. So that's the two-headed monster. It depends on where you are individually. Everybody said if
Level of
I
maturity.
take maturity and I apologize, I should be able to forgive you and move forward. But anytime we hit that forgive and don't forget, we open up the avenue to drag it on through the course of life.
Yes.
I'm going to jump in here. First of all, Orlando, thank you for watching and thank you for being patient. He said, love demands death of self, which in turn generates life to another. Now we can discuss what that means at a later point, but I'll be honest, I always did have a bit of an issue with the term forgive and forget. Because I'm kind of like right there with you. If we forget, then did we ever forgive in the first place? But I think what it is what are we exactly forgetting? You know, you can forget like the pain, the comeback or whatever, but not forget the memory or the lesson involved. But like the godly lesson, the lesson of love and redemption. I don't feel like we should be forgetting that element of it. But we should forget the human side of it. Like you said, like 14 years and then come back at it. That's that, that after the pain is done and you saw, the godly level is we should forgive and forget. But we shouldn't have to forget the spiritual nature of forgiveness, of being able to pass on that lesson, that spiritual growth onto our children, onto our brothers and sisters. There's always a lesson in a pain. And that's what I really feel like is part of the reason why I have an issue with forgive and forget. It's when we continue on in this life, we suffer insults, injuries, and other harms every day sometimes, And we were to hold on to the pain of every single last one of them, or try to forget every last one of them. It's like, did you ever really grow? Sometimes you gotta go through that stress of having somebody get up in your face, and going through the drama and the storms of our lives in order to actually learn something and carry it forward to the next challenge in our lives. But always forgetting allows us never to grow in the first place.
Wow.
Nicely said.
Took 3 seasons for him to take my side on the argument. 3 seasons it took for you to take my side. Thank you, brother.
Let's start with fresh foot.
Right.
And please correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. And we're not trying to get into your business. It just sounds like, once again, when I went back to, there was some hurt caused, and maybe there was enough processing through it, not forgetting, but through it. And so if things are brought back up, it's because it hasn't been processed all the way through. So, and sometimes it takes forgiving, I'm sorry, again and again and again until it is processed all the way.
I agree with you, but I don't like to say devil's advocate because it brings, someone said counsel's advocate. Do we process with God when we ask for forgiveness? So
we should. We should.
Well, how does that look like? We can't really have a dialogue with God. We talk to Him, we pray to Him, no matter how many times. Father, you know what? I cheat, and that's not happening. I cheated on my wife for the 5th time, or for the first time. Yeah. Love you, baby. Never cheated on you. Father, forgive me. Yeah. Let's keep moving. Yeah. Is that a process? We ask for forgiveness. God doesn't open no, hey, sit down, Tiresias. Why did you cheat? Yeah. What was it about that other woman? What was it that your wife wasn't doing? That's when we end up going to the counseling. We try to work through. Now we pay somebody else to dig our dirt up that we should be able to process about. But once again, I think that's the two-headed monster, because when I talk to my God and say, God, forgive me, it's normally a 1 or twice. I move on. Right. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I move on. But that person who's flesh and blood and feelings and emotions, they hold on to it.
Yes.
Right.
And we deal with it years and years. And here I am, 14 years ago, I said something to my wife sitting in a restaurant that, I was sitting in a restaurant, hey, bad. You're still angry about it. I'm talking about to the point that tears come out, and you said this to me, and you made me feel this way. And I'm like, whoa, pause. Right. So you mean to tell me I done missed out on 14 years of happiness and relationships and fun times and touchiness and emotions because of something I said sitting in Applebee's 14 years ago? So that's that two-headed monster that, like, when I talk to my God, I'm sorry, Father, let's move on. Please strengthen me. I won't do it again. But when I talk to you, I relived that for years. Now, if I'm reliving my pain with you for years and I offended him, I punched him for no reason. Yeah. So every time I see him, he's around all the time. He may not say nothing, but in my mind, is this going to be the day he punched me back? Right. Is this the day that his brother punched me back?
Then you never let it go.
You never let it go.
Right.
So that's why I spoke on, depending on where you are. Yeah. I'm 42. A 21-year-old Tiresias. Every time I see you, I'm trying to slap the taste out your mouth because you offended me, whether it's verbally or physically. Right. I'm going to always remember the day that you did whatever. Right. Me now, it hurts. It's painful.
It does, and I think a little bit of it is that also what comes into play on the human perspective is the men-female relationship that. In a world that's trying to make us so equal, but we are so different. So women, and I do this with my youth, or my former youth, because I just stepped down as director. One great example I did was holding hands. So if I had hands with Tay, no disrespect, Mrs. Moore, he may be thinking, oh yeah, this is nice. I think I want some pizza later on. Yeah, I'm kind of hungry. While I, as a female, am holding hands and I'm saying, oh wow, this is nice. I think he likes me. Maybe we'll go on another date. Maybe, and right, because we start building up, because women are emotional, and men more than likely are. I can forgive you and move on. We can talk about it and I'm done. Let's move on. And women, we hang on to it emotionally, and sometimes, and I've noticed this even in my marriage, and I've been married 27 years, and some stuff comes on. Back up that it's on my shoulders and I bring it back up, but with God in the center of our marriage, my husband shows continued grace, and grace hand in hand with forgiveness. That okay, I'm going to have to sit with her again, and we're going to have to process through this again, and underneath it all, because I love her, care for her, we have to work through this, and I need to listen to her to hopefully get to the point that she works through this and I let it go.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I was married before, and my husband ended up being very abusive. I have a special needs daughter because of that. And it took a very, very long time to forgive him, to forgive me, because I felt accountable in this situation, that maybe I stayed too long, maybe I should have done this and this and that. And once I did that, it really freed me to be the person I need to be in the face of God. And you're right. We're still human, and it still rears its ugly head, but we need to be in the practice of forgiveness.
Yeah.
It is the practice of forgiveness. I had a friend who was. There's some hurt, and when I ended up forgiving this friend, I now can go up to this friend and hug this friend and love them dearly. Because I said, it's just hurting. When you don't forgive, it just hurts you,
Right.
and it hurts God.
Let me ask you that.
Because God went through everything on that cross, so we don't do the practice of forgiveness. So that's why, like you said, it's sort of like a two-sided sword. Of it is the greatest act of love, really, in all Christianity. But on the other hand, it is the hardest thing to do and to keep up, because as humans and Satan, because we don't talk about Satan a whole lot anymore in churches. We talk about love of Jesus, this and that, but how many times do we? It's almost like a Voldemort thing, like he shall not be named, right? But Satan loves it when we don't forgive. Satan loves it when we hang on to that hate and that resentment. And bear with me, when we take a step back from everything that is going on in this world right now, in this culture and politics, everything that is going on, guess who's stirring the pot? It is Satan. And all he does is has to do that, and now we are all butting heads within the church, within our culture, within society, within politics, and we're stirring the pot. And I tell my youth, my young adults, we are in spiritual warfare.
Yes.
So
definitely.
when spiritual warfare is happening in your relationships and with your friendships and with your marriage, and you are not doing the act of grace and forgiveness, because where's grace in our society right now? We are a society of reacting. When someone does something, we just react. There's no forgiveness, there's no grace, there's no nothing. And so I think as Christians, we need to step back, remember the armor of God, and look at what's going around and look at the bigger picture. But I'm sorry, I kind of sidetracked.
And what you just said spoke about the maturity level. The process. You have to grow to a level where that you understand the importance of forgiveness, because Jesus said forgive 70 times, 7 times, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Which is a number that's boundless. It carries boundlessness. It means that there's nothing that's going to stagnate you in the process of forgiving someone when you reach the level of understanding that if I don't let this go, 14 years later, I'll hear it again. And the first thing that we say in the flesh is, grow up. That's over with.
Yeah.
We've been here before. So where's the forgiveness?
Right.
That's why, as a youngster, my grandfather told me, if you tell me you forgive me, then forget about it. Because if you bring it up again, the first thing I'm going to do is say you never forgave.
Right.
And it's true. Have I ever really forgiven? If I continuously hold on to things, it stops my growth. Satan's stirring the pot. What is he doing? Stunting the growth.
Right.
You can never move on to a higher level if you're stuck in the same place, whether you bring it up next week or 15 years from now. That 15 years later takes you right back to where you were stuck at before. So now your maturity level has decreased. So we have to. Jesus, if we're Christians, if we're Christ-like, because we stand in the pulpit and we tell people, you must forgive.
Right.
But we never mention you have to forget.
Right.
But we tell them the importance of forgiveness. But we have to tell people that when you forgive, you have to forget.
So when you say forget, do you mean? And I guess that's what.
Because if you don't forget what happened, it'll always hold you accountable for pain.
I can't say that.
I'll give you a perfect idea. My brother burnt me when I was 7 years old.
But you remember it.
But remembering and forgiving and forgetting is three different things.
To kind of go back to what I was saying, though, that's what I meant when I said, what are we forgetting?
And that's where I am. So when you say forget, what is it that I'm forgetting?
So when he burnt me, I have never brought that up to my older brother since he did that. Because he didn't, for one, I don't really believe he meant to do it. It was an accident. For two, if I would have held on to that, that would have caused confliction in our relationship because he would have said, you never forgave me.
But you have the memory, and that's where I come back to.
See, you're never. It's a consequence for every action. There is no. What he's saying is, my brother burnt me. I know it was an accident, so I've never mentioned it again. He's using it as an illustration right now.
Right.
But the consequence of being burnt is you remember that pain for the rest of your life. You got that scar. But he's never approached his brother with it again, so I forgave him.
It's
I have
over
not
with.
used it as a weapon. You burnt me that one time when I was 7 years old.
Right.
Let's flip the scenario. I mentioned last time I was molested.
Right.
So with that molestation, I've never had the conversation. From the period of 7 to 10 years old, a family friend took advantage of me and did, God knows. I wasn't in a home where we had open dialogue about sex and about a molestation and so on. So with me being a kid and me trusting the older person, I didn't know it was wrong. I found out it was wrong sitting in my senior class of 95. I'm in a sex education class. They're talking about sex education, molestation. And at the end of the class, I'm just dumbfounded. Like, yo, I was molested. I was raped multiple times. To this day, I still haven't confronted that individual. To that day, I still haven't acknowledged to him or anybody in the family who it was. When I did reach out to people, they was like, you're making this up. You're seeking attention. Blase, blase. You know, I'm the victim now. So once you come to the realization that, hey, I've been abused, I've been harmed. Like, and we're talking about forgiving and forgetting, going towards. So now that this year I have empowered myself to tell the story, I had to forgive him. Because for so many years there was hatred and pain there, but I didn't forgive him, the physical person. I forgave the actor, I forgave whatever, but I had to free myself. It goes back to growth. I had to free myself at the moment to not allow that to use that as an excuse for my actions or for my anger or for whatever it was. So, honestly speaking, if I saw him right now, I don't know what happened. It wouldn't be good. But for the moment, or for where I am in my life and what I do with these kids, and I share my story, I had to forgive that person or forgive myself, or I forgave something for me to let it go.
So you can move on.
I would never forget it.
But
I would never. It's going to be with me for eternity. But I cannot walk around and use that as a crutch for me doing God knows what. You molested me, so I'm gonna molest you, or he molested me. But this is so that's the act of forgiving. But you'll never forget it.
and that's my point. So what I'm saying is, when we use the adage "forgive and forget," what do we mean by forget? That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? You can't forget certain things that make an imprint.
I don't think I can justify that forget for you though.
That's something you have to do.
But I'm saying, just in general, if we're talking about in terms of the term forgive and forget, right? Certain things, like it's like you say, you got burnt. You won't forget being burnt. I get at some point you don't bring it up. I get that.
So I tell you this. Today was probably the first time in 20 years that I even spoke about that. Because I forgot about it. I know my brother didn't do that to hurt me. He actually was trying to protect me from a pot falling on the stove, and he grabbed the pot. The pot was hot. He turned around, and I was there, and it burnt me. You get what I'm saying? So, but I will never bring that up to him because I don't want him to feel any way different than how I feel about the
Tell him on camera
situation.
because he's watching right now.
Yeah. so, bruh, you know I love you. I've always loved you. It's nothing between us. It never has been, and it will never be.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump in right now. Ramon Jackson chimed in and said, it sounds like forgetting, as they are referencing, is synonymous with letting go, not necessarily erasing from the mind, but a changing of perspective so that you no longer allow yourself to remember it from that place of contentment. Is it?
There's a question from the watch party.
No.
Okay, we can't see the watch.
No.
Okay, so it says, why do y'all think God don't just take the memories away?
I think it goes back to what I was saying before. You know, there's something in the act, even if someone has wronged you, that people can use in order to grow further, to improve upon themselves, to grow closer to the Lord, to invite the person.
And I would
wrong.
say not just even to grow, but there's a purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a purpose in everything, from the good and the bad. So even sharing your story, even through that pain, to be able to now share it with young people as you do, bridges a relationship with those young people. Because now you're not just someone blabbing at them from across a desk or across a chair. You're someone who went through a level of pain that they may have gone through.
Yeah.
So even though there's a purpose to the puzzle, there's a purpose to the picture, that eventually as our lives go on, we draw back and we see the fuller picture of God and the plan and the purpose He has for us. So things that happen to us may not even necessarily be for us. It may be for somebody else, to benefit somebody else. And I've seen this over and over and over again. So my pain can serve a purpose.
Right.
Your pain can serve a purpose.
Yeah, I guess that's.
Go ahead, sir.
I guess that's where I'm at with the forget, because I feel like I can forgive, but when that thing that resonates in my mind, you know what I mean? It's like turning your test into a testimony. Like I've been through things, right? You know, like mother was a drug addict, right? Dealt with the addiction. Biological father, not in the picture. You know what I mean? I have to, as I got older, I had to forgive them, and that's something.
Level of maturity.
Right. But I don't forget that. And the reason that I don't forget is because now that I have 3 daughters, I know that I'm always there for them. You know what I mean? Like, it helped me become a better parent because I know my biological parents
The
weren't
purpose.
there. So that's why I am, is when I say forgive and forget, I say, that's why I'm like, what do you mean by forget? Because those things help us grow.
Forget it and use it as an instrument to grow.
Of course, and She Major actually wanted to say, great answer, that's it. Purpose, that's it. And
So it's a cliche phrase.
Yes.
Forgive and forget.
yes, I agree.
Everything that's cliche doesn't apply to our life.
Right.
You know, like I part of my testimony is everything that I've ever been through has prepared me to lead you through.
Yes.
Everything that I've ever been through has prepared me to lead you through. I work with young people all day, their parents, everybody, they sit back. So there's a difference. You ever had a conversation with somebody and, you know, I know how you feel. I know how you feel. I'm right there with you. No, you don't know how I feel.
You're right.
You haven't been here with me.
You're right.
But as my sister just stated, when I'm sitting across from a young man in a prison and they just heard Mr. McCall or Mr. McCall come by and say, yeah, I was molested. And they're looking at me like they see this big, black, strong guy and, oh my God, like you was molested too? Like you didn't kill yourself? You didn't, you so everything that I've been through, it was a preparation for me. Now, some of the stuff I've been through, God knows I wish I had now.
Right.
But at the same time, I couldn't be Mr. McCall.
Yes.
So that's a part of the acceptance. That's a part of that. You're not going to forget it. Really, I mean, unless you just develop amnesia, you hit your head, you're not going to forget it.
Right.
But the problem is when we hold on to it so long that we're hurting
It
ourselves
stunts our growth.
instead of blessing somebody else.
Right.
Yes.
Forgive and forget. Like, it's cliche. It doesn't apply to everything. You know, obviously, 14 years later, she just hit me, broke down crying. I'm like, yo, for real? That was an item? That was an issue? But once again, if it was an issue for you, obviously she never forgot it.
Right.
Yes.
She never let it go. So at that point in time, I commenced to apologize. Now I sat there and listened to her for 45 minutes. And I have a sponge, and I went back and apologized for everything she said I had offended her over that course of 15 years. And in the last 3 years, she hasn't mentioned it again. Maybe at work, I don't know. It may come up. We got 3 years ago. I mean, got 11 more years. She'll hit me again. You know, but I cannot
When you
control.
go home.
I can't, I can't control.
Right. So you want to talk
control
about our
that.
business.
I can't control that, you know. So I'm at a point of maturity right now. Well, I gotta love Tiresias,
Yeah.
and that's I've been waiting for somebody else to accept me and love me my whole life, and it's never come.
Wow.
Forgive and forget. What am I forgetting? What am I forgiving? I say I'm sorry. Somebody still want to hear. That's. I don't know. It's cliche. It's just something we say.
It is
Right.
cliche.
You know, it's just so. I've realized that I got to look in the mirror, and when I brush my teeth, I got to be honest with that person in the mirror. So if I offend my brother, I'm going to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, sir, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
Right.
If he don't forget it, if he don't forgive me, it's not on me no more.
That's
I've
right.
freed myself.
Amen.
Yes.
I
Amen.
honestly reached out to him
Amen.
and said, "You that time, that one day at band camp, you know, I'm sorry."
I don't
Yeah,
want
I'm
to laugh
saying-
at that. But
Yeah. You know, that was my sense of humor. But
5 seconds delay.
I'm at back.
I'm sorry. So now I'm here. If
Okay.
he never forget me, I got to keep living.
Yeah.
I got to. So whether it's my wife, my mom, my dad, my sister, this brother, whoever, sir, I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Yes.
Wow.
And at that point in time, I gotta move on. Whether you move along with me or not, I did. I can't do nothing else.
Right.
Now she mentioned something earlier, like, okay, maybe my husband he's gonna have to relive this whole thing. But at this time, okay, yeah, we can go through the motions. I'll listen to you, but I'm done with it.
Right.
I said I'm sorry and I meant it. So your maturity opens up for things.
Absolutely. And we have a message too from She Major. She said, "Your remembering is only tied to a certain part of us, and you can only remember what you don't forget. So as you evolve and change into the true you, it dies with the old you. So if you still remember, then the purpose of the pain has not served its purpose."
Say it with your chest.
What? Oh, say it with
Can't
my...
hear you.
Sorry. Forgetting is a process like Forgetting is a process like forgiving. The person that we really have to forgive is the person that stares at us back in the mirror.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Nothing
So-
wrong with that, yeah.
So going off that, we've talked a lot about forgiving other people, right? But how do we forgive ourselves? And I think you kind of touched on it. And just going back from the last time you were here, and you gave your testimony, which was powerful. I remember you saying you had to forgive yourself. when you have that stage of depression. A lot of times I feel like, even, I don't want to say as Christians, just as human beings, we fall into that pit of despair where we can't forgive ourselves about something. And it's not necessarily something we did to somebody else. A lot of times it could be a choice we made. Man, I flunked out of college. What I mean? Why didn't I pride myself? Man, I didn't get the job. Those type of things where you have to forgive yourself and move on. In that sense, I would say you got to forgive and forget, as the cliche says, almost. I mean, when I think of myself, when I first flunked out of college, I was probably, if I think about it, the first one of my family to go to college. Education wasn't a big deal, and here I am in college. And I remember my grandfather, who I call my dad, Pop, he said, boy, he was the first one to go to college and the first one to flunk. And everybody laughed. Man, I was about to cry. And to this day, it's still like, man, it took me so long to get my education. You know what I mean?
But pause. That's a part of your story.
Exactly. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going.
So, I apologize for it. That's a part of your.
Exactly.
That's what we get so caught up in today's expectation of what we haven't done.
Expectations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yo, that was part of your story.
Of course.
That led to something else. I flunked out, whatever. Daddy joked on me, Pop joked on me. I would have did something else, and I became this. But that's a part of your story.
Exactly.
So look what God done
you
today.
you cannot change that.
But I had to forgive myself
that's
to
the
move
part.
forward.
You had to forgive, but
Yeah.
that's where we, society, the why. I pride myself, and I had to learn. I don't ask why. It happened. My whys is not going to make. If I bounce a check right now, why did I write that check? I still bounced the check.
You know why.
I still,
You know why.
I still owe the bank. So what is why going to do? You know what I'm saying? Like we set ourselves. So we ask ourselves these questions that we can't answer that leads to the depression. Why? So now when I don't have an answer and I'm already confused and I'm on the verge, I push myself over because I'm asking things that I can't answer. That was a part of your story.
Right.
Embrace it. When you're brushing that teeth, like, hey, look at here, man. I jumped out of cars, but look at me now.
And I think, and I did a message on brokenness. And remember, we're human, sinning, and through our sin, we are broken. So there are things in our lives that will make us or break us, things in our lives that will ding us, and sometimes as I call it, sometimes there are events that can actually crack the soul, things that are so hurtful. But in the example I gave in this message was there's a Japanese process called kitsukori. So they take broken pottery and they fix it with gold. So what's more valuable right now when you take a piece of perfect pottery and a piece of broken pottery, but the broken pottery is now fixed with gold? What is
What's
more
more
valuable? So Jesus Christ is our gold. Jesus Christ is the one that pulls us together.
Yes.
And in our brokenness, we are the closest, we are the most vulnerable to God because we are hiding nothing at that point.
Wow.
At that point, we are showing our true selves and all of our weakness. Everything else is put to the side, and we are on our knees in front of God. And that is part of the practice of forgiveness.
Wow.
Is part of the grace, is part of the brokenness, and is part of the purpose. So
Yes.
once again, as part of your story and part of your brokenness comes the purpose of your destiny, of God's destiny for you.
Absolutely. So we have a few updates from She Major again. She added on to her previous comment that that is the first step to being true to you and making yourself available to where God can really use you. And she continues on to say, we are all two in one, the lower and higher us. And the main goal is to bring the lower us in subjection to the higher us. The mind, body, and spirit should be on one accord, and we should never neglect one for the other.
I take that.
I do.
Amen.
Because God said there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus. So why
Yeah.
should we hold on to condemnation?
Yeah, definitely,
Agreed.
definitely. You actually have a awesome story as far as forgiveness. I don't know if you want to share because I just put you on the spot and But
reference to
just your
my background.
yeah.
Yeah, because I've told this story many times. I'm one of the few people that you will ever meet that graduated high school, graduated college, played professional sports, went in the military, and went to prison. So the question that you asked about how do you forgive yourself, it was probably the hardest thing that I ever had to do in my life, because I felt like I let so many people down because of the image, the expectations of other people on me. I'm supposed to walk this straight line. I'm not supposed to veer off this straight line. But until I made that mistake, and at the time I used to say I would do it again, because if somebody hurt my sister, I'm going to do what I did then, but I've learned from it. So I won't do what I did back then. But it taught me the purpose. Until I made that mistake was the day until I got on my knees and said, Lord, I need you. So in all of that, that was the point where I was broken. To the point where that I said, Lord, I need you, because I don't know how to do this life. You've given me so many opportunities to live this life. And some way, somehow, I keep reverting back. I keep taking a step backwards. So you show me, and that was 22 years ago.
Wow.
You show me.
Yeah.
And then he put me on that potter's wheel. And then he started molding me.
Yeah.
And then with the maturity level,
Right.
he showed me how to mature. He showed me how, listen, you can't, for the first 6 years I was home, I thought I was nothing. All of these things I accomplished meant nothing, because I couldn't forget that one thing.
Yeah.
So everything else that I accomplished in life, I was letting go to the wayside, because I wouldn't forget that one thing that God had to grow me from.
Yeah.
Right.
So today, that's why I say, I don't use that cliche, forgive and forget.
Yeah.
Because I have to forget what was the pain in my life so I can get to the forgiveness in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the thing, when we're talking about forgiveness, we're just saying it as just forgiveness. I forgive you now, and but it really is a process. I think, and you touched on it when you were saying, we don't go through that process when we're talking to God, but I ain't got I ain't that saved from it,
But you aren't that same person that you
Yeah,
were before
exactly.
either. Neither am I, so that's why it's easy for me to forgive.
Right.
And then just forget about the rest.
And but hindsight is 20/20. When you look back on the pain, you say, "Oh yeah, I overcame that through the grace of God." But when you in it, man, you in it. You know what I mean? And I mean, I think we all have certain, what's the best way I can say, damaging traits or certain unhealthy emotions that come with forgiveness.
Because we damage ourselves.
Right. My coping mechanism is anger. You know what I mean? Like when I know I have to forgive, I get mad, and I don't get mad where I ain't busting up nothing, I don't think. But, I get mad so we're like, I'm short with you. I cut you off. I'll say something and don't want to hear nothing you have to say. And a lot of times it is me having to calm myself down and having to talk things out. I think one of the best gifts my wife ever gave me was the number to a counselor. Especially me being a pastor. Pastors,
Of
course.
we gotta have the answer.
Yeah.
We got the answer to everybody else's problem except for ours, because you can't know that I'm flawed. I'm supposed to be your shepherd. And when you have that type of pressure on you, you dealing with school, you're growing the church, working your regular job because ministry don't pay nothing. and family, it can be a lot. And I think, probably, the greatest gift my wife ever gave me was the number to a counselor.
Because when you put your flaws in front of you, you can see them.
It's a freeing,
you can work on them.
Yeah, it's a freeing thing.
Yes.
And we have another message, and I got to comment on this too. I think we all have to. It's from she again. Maybe she. Yes. Yeah. Anyhow, I think we all have to understand that purpose is not rich or poor, success or failure. It's purpose. So
True.
when we try to call purpose by another name, it only knows that the name that it is given. Purpose. Purpose is nothing more than what we are doing at that time on the purpose to gain the wisdom we need to continue on our journey called life.
Amen.
Amen.
Hey.
Amen.
Yeah,
Well, we
absolutely.
have to
Amen.
remember that on this earth, we are so caught up in things defining us, accomplishments defining us, and it should be Jesus defining us.
Amen.
If Jesus is defining us, everything else falls into place. But when we try to do the puzzle out of order, it's not going to work, and you're not going to see the picture in the end.
Two
In the
things.
end.
Yeah.
I agree with my sister wholeheartedly. How often do we go to everybody else but Jesus first? Don't
Ooh.
answer the question. Just think about it.
Ooh.
Don't just like even me.
Ooh, I almost shouted on that one, bro.
You offend me,
Ooh.
and I go to everybody. Do you understand what this dude just did to me? Da, da, da,
Ooh,
da, da, da,
I
da.
almost shouted
But
on
if
that.
we stop and say, you know what, God, I need you right now. I need you. Like he offended
And
me.
mean it.
Like take it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first point. Second point is they say hurt people hurt people. So a lot of us don't know we hurt until we're being hurt again. So you haven't forgiven or you haven't forgave, but yet you're enduring more pain. So it's the trauma, PTSD.
Right.
Yes.
It's just stacking, it's just building, it's just da 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 da. So it goes back to you where I've learned in the last 3 years that once I say I'm sorry, I have to move on. You may not speak to me again. You may not say anything to me again. But when you just said you had a friend that offended you back in the day, you saw them, something moved you to forgive them, and then y'all pick back up. That's the same person.
Right. Yeah.
But until you let it go,
Right? Exactly.
They
she
became
received you
different.
back.
Yeah.
and nothing changed. You change.
Because I was the one having the issue.
You have
It
issues.
was on my heart.
So
So, yeah.
that's why I go back to the two-headed monster. We expect for everybody to dance and to fall at our feet and worship us.
Right.
But we don't never fall at his feet and worship him.
Wow.
So until we start falling at his feet and worship him consistently and first, we're going to continue to hurt people. We're going to continue to be hurt. And we would never let go
Because
of
we
anything.
don't understand.
We don't understand.
Right, 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 right.
We are at time, so we're gonna have final thoughts. We start with the lady.
It's a practice. It's a practice. It's not a perfection, and bottom line, we're still human. And so I ask all of you to show grace, show love, and keep the armor of God on, and practice. Keep practicing forgiveness.
Amen. I'll say just, continue to seek God in everything that you do. Allow him to lead you in your forgiveness, because he'll show you exactly how to forgive. Remove yourself from the pain and allow God to fix you.
Wow.
Amen. When you point your fingers, there are 3 fingers pointing directly back at you. Me, myself, and I. If I get me correct, I will allow me to forgive. With forgiving, I'll be able to forgive myself, and nothing else matters.
Amen.
Address me, myself, and I, and stop worrying about the next man or woman.
Amen.
Amen.
And what I have to say goes out to the people who are still holding on to that hurt, that pain, who say that I can't forgive. Ask yourself, have you really tried? Because a lot of people believe sometimes that pain, that misery, that hurt goes so deep that there's just no way that they can even attempt it. But I ask you, if you truly tried and gave into God and let him do the heavy lifting, how great your life may be.
Amen.
And you will never know until you try. So for anybody out there who's hurting, I ask you, please, try God. See what happens.
Yeah.
Amen.
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 I would end it with how I started it. Forgiveness is a characteristic of God. If we are to live a godly life, we have to start with that. I think every single one of us at some point has pointed to, you have to start with God. You have to start with the faith, and everything comes after that. We can use the cliche forgive and forget. We can use anything that makes it sound good. But at the end of the day, it is a godly characteristic. And if we are to live our lives, if we are to live an abundant life according to God's will, we have to learn how to forgive.
Amen.
Like God forgives us. We fall short to the glory of God, the righteousness of God. I mean, as Isaiah 64 speaks of our glory being filthy rags to the righteousness of God. So, but it is that progression, progression over perfection. We're not going to be perfect, but God wants us every day to grow. So as we grow in our faith, we should grow in our forgiveness. We should grow in our love and our grace and everything else. But I want to thank our guests. So I want to thank you.
Before we have
one more?
Yeah, we have a message from Barb.
From Barb Core. And it's ironic I wouldn't say what I did before you reading your message, Barb, and I apologize for that. I understand what y'all saying, but how can you forgive someone who has lied about you and others, run with a lie about how you can... Wait, sorry.
Say it with your chest.
I apologize. I understand what y'all all saying, but how can you forgive someone who has lied about you and others, runs with lies about how you forgive someone like that?
Me, can I go?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Because Jesus Christ forgave those who lied about him.
Amen.
And misconstrued about him, plotted to kill him. Jesus Christ did it. And he did it for you, and you can do it for him.
So there go my sister.
Yes.
If Jesus can forgive the persons that killed him, who are we not to forgive?
Amen.
But remember, you too sin. I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to myself. We too sin, and we ask for forgiveness all the time. And we expect immediate forgiveness. So if that person continues to hurt you, whatever, forgive them and disown them. Cut them. Let them go. Stop being around that person. Mama, daddy, sister, brother, husband, whoever. Let them go. But you can't control nobody but you.
And forgiveness is not for them, it's for you.
For you. You got to look at that person in the mirror and love you.
What they said.
TP says great discussion,
Yes.
and so does Shy. Said great discussion. All right.
All right. Okay. I want to thank all of our guests for showing up, for talking about forgiveness. Great episode. If you want to support and seed this ministry, you can go to GoFundMe, Church Mind and Matter, and seed this ministry. Also, we have a new thing, Patreon account. If you would like to sponsor an episode, if you would like to be a part of the Squizzard and be a part of the Amplify family, you can do that. I believe the link is either in the description box or it should be coming up on the ticker for Patreon. You can go to patreon.com and just put in Church Mind and Matter, and you can find it for as little as $2 a month. You can actually help us do more episodes, get more guests. Not that our guests aren't great and awesome. You see the new setup, and we are just doing bigger and better things. If you want to know what the topic is for next week's show, Patreon. $2 a month, you can know that. On top of other things, we have there's other things we offer. Not only will you get to know what show is on Beyond, you will also have one-on-one conferences with me and the church and the mind. I don't know if you want to talk to him, but there are so many things you can do. Just go on patreon.com. You can see what type of perks are in sponsorships of this show. We want to thank Amplify Network for hosting us for another season.
Yeah.
They ain't dumped us yet. I don't know why. Again, we just want to say like and share. We are on YouTube. We are on, of course, Facebook. We are on Instagram. Just put in Amplify Network or Church Mind and Matter. Any tags anybody want to follow on Instagram? No. Okay, they just doing it for God.
Amen.
We thank you, family. We love you, church.
I got a tag. Forgive
tag.
yourself.
Forgive yourself. Hashtag forgive yourself.
There you go.
It's about to be
Amen.
trending on Twitter.
Amen.
There we go.
Amen.
Amen. We love you, family. Church Mind and Matter, Amplify Network. Until next time, love, peace, forgiveness, and happiness.
Amen.
Amen.